Welcome to the American Intelligence Media, the home of the Anonymous Patriots. I am Douglas Gabriel, your host, also known as Thomas Paine, and I'm continuing our six-part conversation with the most amazing man in the world, Michael McKibben, the owner of Leader Technology. Michael?
Glad to be back.
These conversations are a revelation to me. This last one I wanted to do much more informally, and I wanted to say, what is it you want to say that you haven't said? And then we'll go from there.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate the time and energy you guys have put into doing this interview. It's been a long trek for our company and me in trying to decide what we were going to do about the things we learned over time, because initially we thought there was going to be an immediate reaction we would do in the courts. And then as we dug into the courts, we realized these judges are corrupt, so what's the point? We're just going to get blindsided. So at that point, we just sort of said, well, we don't know what the solution's going to be, but let's just gather the data. And so in the process of all this data gathering we've done over this last decade, a lot of the actors that we see in the press every day now are the same actors that we've encountered in our investigation. And so pretty much when I disengaged from the idea of going back to court right away, I really looked at my responsibility from a Christian stewardship perspective, that God had given me an understanding of the circumstances that we had engaged in, but I didn't know the answer. So what I'm going to do is just take each day as it comes, and we are going to see what God has in store. So what I conclude after this decade is that God has led us here, and I've stopped being angry a long time ago with all these thieves. I feel sorry for them. They can't take any of this with them either. So the fact that they're accruing all this massive wealth doesn't really change their lives, and it doesn't give them power over other people's lives. But I basically said, I don't know where this is going, but let's just keep going. And as the pieces started coming together, it really became clear that we were called to understand what's going on, and it really started to come into focus during the presidential election, when it became clear that this cast of characters were intent on taking over the government, and that Hillary Clinton was their candidate to do that. And it was at that point that we had like 16 or 17 Republican candidates for president, and so it was clear that we couldn't have a situation where, if these guys got the reins of power for another 4 years, it was probably going to be too late, because as we know, Barack Obama was giving up control of the internet to the UN, and that wasn't a mistake. That was a very clear plan. And with that, he gave up basically the kill switch on the internet. And by that, I mean it's as easy as taking your name off a list to stop your website from being accessed anywhere on the planet. And that had been managed by the US government through ICANN, and was now transferred to this international control. So basically, we were 10 times more accessible, that's not the right word, vulnerable to a tyrant coming in and taking over the internet from an international base, that our whole way of life could have changed literally overnight. And I don't think people know how close we were before Donald Trump's election to that being what was going to happen. And that how this tyrant could easily take you off the list, and then your website's gone forever. And if they decide you can't go back on, then you're done with use of communication. So there were a lot of things that started occurring. So as this information came into focus, it came into focus at the same time as the election. And so I decided, after Donald Trump became the nominee to endorse him. And I recognized at that point that he was the victim of some of these psychological operations that you referred to, that I'm somewhat familiar with, but makes total sense, that he was being attacked with certain triggers and signals, and that was having an effect on a certain amount of the population. So recognize that we better support this man, because he may be one of our last big hopes for getting this fixed. And so thank God he was nominated, and then he was elected. But then I realized, because of what I know about the internet, that was the beginning of the battle, that these guys had most of their troops in place throughout the network, throughout the systems. And they had bribed a lot of people. They had blackmailed a lot of people. So the system that was intended to take over was still there. And I think we're in the midst of that right now. So it's my prayer that God will continue to protect our president and his loyal staff, and that he will help, with our help, get us through this.
So true. I just hope that happens, and I hope that we can see this transformation. And when you mentioned it used to be one guy who assigned the ICANN numbers, right? One guy in America. And they wanted to play like America didn't control the internet. And then when we hear that China can control who gets on the internet, Russia can control it, Turkey controls it, they can control Twitter, they control anything they want. But we had to play the game like we didn't even control the internet, like it's just some magical force out there. It doesn't even run on any lines that are controlled by the federal government. Those cables, we don't know who owns them. So they play this game. And then when they gave away ICANN, these identification numbers for when you're on the internet, and we gave it to a UN group, and that was Stephen Crocker, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so at that moment, the gig was up.
Right.
Anyone who's awake says, that's all a lie. That's a complete and absolute lie. Why then would we give it away, except for one reason, and that's to play like we can't turn off the computers of terrorists?
Right.
Anonymous came out and said, look, United States government, if you do not close the sites of Islamic fascist terrorists in your country, we're going to. The government did not respond. The next day they closed 10,000 confirmed sites.
Wow.
The government could have ended that.
Sure.
The government could end pornography on the internet, but the government created pornography on the dark web for entrapment purposes. So what we have here is a game that's being played, and it's a horrifying game, and we can't just say, as Betsy said, look, Doug, you can't just have people just turn off Google and turn off. They're addicted to these things. This is a drug.
You don't have to turn them off, but you do have to fix the engineering that's causing all the abuse of privacy and property.
But
you can fix that. Yeah, you can fix that. It's just programming.
Okay.
It's not magic.
Okay. So it can be fixed.
Yeah, of course. It's just engineering.
So then
it's not magic.
The problem is solvable.
Exactly.
That was one of my last questions to you is, can we solve this problem?
Yes. We're human beings. We have a tremendous creative capacity, and we just need to apply it to the particular topic at hand, and we can fix it. Human beings built it to where it is now. Human beings can fix the parts that have become corrupted.
It amazes me when people like yourself, when I talk to these geniuses who say they just write code, it's just zeros and ones. It's just zeros and ones. Well, that may be true, and I know that's true.
It is. I mean, if I pick up something here and move it over here, I've moved it. That's a bit of engineering. Well, that's the same thing. It's just you can't see it in programming, and that's why it's so magical to people, I think. But in the end, it's not. So what we really need is to develop a guild of technologists that start that commit to ethical practices. It's so easy for a technologist who knows nobody understands what they're doing to cheat people. And so in the end, the technologists have to decide not to cheat people. It's got to be their own moral character that comes into play. And right now, that has not even been on anybody's radar screen.
Boy, that's for sure. Now, your geniuses that you worked with, I call them geniuses because compared to me, they're geniuses. Your engineers you worked with, what are they doing What are they doing now? Did they give up? I know that you and your Leader Technology group continues. You have patents, you have copyrights, you still continue to do work. Did those initial people who helped you create this, did they become so discouraged they left the industry?
No, they hung on as long as they could with the company. Now they're all out doing other things.
So they're all
As
going
far as
out
I
there
know.
with their zeros and ones doing magic other
Yeah,
places.
that was their profession, and they're continuing.
And Leader Technology goes on.
Yes.
And you have multiple patents, I guess, and multiple copyrights. And so I think one day you told me some amazing thing you had done or recently did. And it's like, oh, so every once in a while, when they have a big problem, somebody calls you and you go out and fix it. Is that still what Leader Technology is doing?
We were doing that, but we're now focused pretty closely on this Miller Act notice. Because we've recognized that's the way to do it. And right now, the technology world is so corrupted that it doesn't make sense as an entrepreneur, in my view, to go out there unless you're going to suck up to the tyrants. It makes no sense to go into technology right now, in my view.
Well, we just saw an article 2 days ago that said clearly that the Patent Office supports large corporations and not small inventors.
Right.
And you get a patent nowadays, and then they call you back into the patent trial and appeal court
Board, yeah.
board, and they take away 92% of the patents that they gave out, and then they steal them, and then you can't even address them anymore.
David Capos and Barack Obama pushed through something called the America Invents Act. And that act legalized basically stalking of inventors by the large corporations through something called the re-examination process. So here, you've paid a lot of money, you've gone through this whole process of going with examiners, and you get your patent. This patent re-examination process now gives large corporations the opportunity to go in and challenge your patent as if you never received it. And now they've given them the opportunity to do it multiple times. There's a case before the Supreme Court right now on this. And I mean, think about it. It makes no sense. You've paid the money, you've done a contract, you've got a patent. You're proud of it. Now they can file as many re-exams as they want on your patent and just bury you with legal practice. That's why these law firms have got to have a huge reformation of the way they work, because they've bought in. That's where they get their pay. That's where they get their $1,000 an hour, is from these large corporations who are doing this. So maybe they didn't intend to get there, but they're there now because they've got to create income for their partners.
Michael, your story is amazing. What is even more amazing to me is your moral courage to go on. And also your research, and the research of all of your shareholders and your supporters on the American for Innovation website. It's amazing. If anyone has not looked at that, they need to go look at it as soon as they possibly can. You will see information in there that has been hidden so well that it will probably shock you, especially if you see the big picture. Admittedly, this is a 500-page document, which
that
shows...
site has been a godsend for us because it's provided the information that people need to make a decision that's not just an emotional decision. I mean, so much of what you see in the mainstream media is just fake. And so if you're going to make an argument, especially a moral argument, you better have the facts to back it up. And that's what this team of people has decided to do, is provide the facts so that human beings could make good decisions on their own, rather than just rely on a couple of things they heard on the nightly news and think that's the truth.
That sounds like what your intent was originally for social networking, what you've done here on this website. You provide the information, it's free, you let people make their own mind up, and if you really look at it, you're going to find all the indictable information that would put those people in jail if that's where someone wanted to go. So I think that as a truth warrior, myself, and I believe that you are one too, and particularly Americans for Innovation, an amazing site for truth warriors, that's one of the things people can do. They can go there, they can read that, they can become educated, they can educate others, and then they have their network. They can send it out, or they sometimes know the exact right person who might be able to be told this information that could then really help the situation. So I'm asking every single viewer to get on board with the Leader Technology versus Facebook, what would we call this, scandal. It's really a horrifying scandal. But to spread this word so that we, again, every single day, people like Mark Zuckerberg, like Eric Schmidt, and these people who are fakes are called out again and again and again, because I always find that you find the most indictable information when they're bragging about themselves.
Right.
And when you criticize them, then they come out and brag about themselves. That's why Sean Parker came out, because we just found out the truth about Uri Milner being actually one of the big insider investors, Russian, along with the largest one of the largest Russian banks, VTB, through Alisher Usmanov.
And the Kremlin.
And the Kremlin. I mean, this is coming out every single day. So if people can get on board and they can literally take stuff that's either on Aim for Truth or Truth News headlines on the Americans for Innovation, they can take that, they can package it, they can send it out, they can do videos, they can do whatever part they can do. We're calling on every single patriot in America to take back the free internet and to stop
So
the
what you're
militarization.
describing is what every engineer knows, and that is when you're faced with a problem, you can't fix it until you know the facts associated with the problem. And if you leave a couple of the facts out, you're going to have a broken solution. And so that's been the objective, is to get those facts out there, and putting those fact tools in people's hands can allow them then to be creative and get their own facts and grow this. And I think frankly that's what Ben Franklin was talking about. He was saying, if you're going to have a republic, you got to keep it. You got to work at it. It's not just going to be handed to you. And I think they feared what we are experiencing now, but they also gave us the tools to fix it if we will do it. But it's going to take us. It's not going to take a government or a magical wand or even the president by himself. It's the citizens of this republic that have to restore it.
Absolutely, and just like when Trump went in, he didn't believe the intelligence community, the 17 agencies that were supposed to report to him. They told him nothing but garbage. And so we, as the American intelligence media, we focus on presenting intelligence exactly like Americans for Innovation do. When the intelligence gets out there and your intelligence and our intelligence starts to cross-pollinate one another,
Right.
It's astounding what happens. We are very thrilled that you said that we helped provide a couple pieces for you. You provided an infinite amount of pieces for us. So we're going to continue. We're going to continue writing intelligence reports. Betsy and her team, Thomas and the Conclave, we got your back. We're going to be doing everything we can to use this very tool of information control against them as an information tool for freedom. And we just want to say, we got your back, Michael. We're supporting you.
Well,
we really hope that you win.
I appreciate it, and my shareholders appreciate it, and I'm sure that if they were here, they would all say they're going to do the same thing with Aim for Truth and your work. So I think that's what it's going to take. It's we the people saving our republic.
Absolutely. Win-win-win for we the people. Michael, I have to thank you for this amazing set of interviews that you've given, and we just want to say we support you completely, and we are planning that you are going to win so that we can get our freedoms back.
Amen.
Thank you.